coat. I'm with the coat in a space with people, and the coat is not here with me now. It's in fact in Ely Cathedral at this moment on display, waiting to depart from Ely at the end of next week. But when I begin, I would usually enter the space with the singing of the coat song. And the coat song is really the telling of the coat's story and the coat's intention. It's a declaration. So I will begin as usual with the coat song. Ask me where I'm going. Ask me what is my purpose. Ask me what my name is. They call me the coat of hopes. In Ely today, then east to Norwich I'll be bound, worn and walked along my way when those willing can be found. In truth, my destination is each person that I meet. The turning of our future is on all our backs and feet. Ask me where I'm going. Ask me what is my purpose. Ask me what my name is. They call me the coat of hopes. What is it that I'm taking to the ones who will decide if as a world we'll do all in our power to survive? Only pieces of blanket I've collected on my path, with griefs, hopes, prayers, remembrances for the lands through which I've passed. Ask me where I'm going. Ask me what is my purpose. Ask me what my name is. They call me the coat of hopes. So here's my invitation. Come and make me who I'll be. Come mark your hopes on blanket and I'll sew them into me. A coat that's made by everyone for everyone to wear. To feel my warmth and the weight of responsibility we share. Ask me where I'm going. Ask me what is my purpose. Ask me what my name is. They call me the coat of hopes.
Barbara, that was beautiful. It was so lovely that many of us here could remember hearing that invitation in the song and accepting the invitation to walk and to sow our griefs, remembrances, prayers and hopes into the coat. David is just showing us a short slideshow of the coat, and you'll be able to see some of those panels that pilgrims have sewn into the coat. Perhaps, Barbara, you could tell us a little bit more about people choosing to add their little mark in a patch into the coat, please.
So the coat started out completely blank on Newhaven Beach at the end of August 2021, and the first patch was added on the back of the collar there. It's a crocheted flower made by the town crier of Newhaven, and subsequently each week we had 2 or 3 stitching stops in which patches that had been gathered along our way. We were at that point walking to COP26 in Glasgow, a continuous 9-week walk. So as we went, we gathered these patches. We'd informed people along our route that we were coming ahead of time. So lots of people had patches ready, but others we met and they subsequently sent patches forward. So that what happened was sort of week by week, the coat grew in the number of patches it had, to the point that the night we arrived in Glasgow, there were so many patches still to be sewn on before we were at the gates of the COP in the morning that 7 women sewed all night in the crypt of St George's Tron Church in Glasgow. And the patches continue to be added. The invitation for the patches is that people would sow their griefs, remembrances, prayers, or hopes for the place where they live in the face of climate and ecological breakdown into their patch. And the patches are made of pieces of blanket. I chose blanket as the material because a blanket is this fundamental textile which we might be wrapped in as a baby. It might be the only warmth we have in prison. You'd have a blanket in hospital. In every kind of part of life, it's this essential, comforting, warmth-giving material. So the patches are made on pieces of blanket. That's a picture of the church in Chapeltown, isn't it?
Yes.
Catherine. So that's where Catherine heard me speaking about the coat.
And it's so lovely in the song that you make it meaningful to the place the coat is in. So just now you've sung us the song about the coat being in Ely.
Yeah.
And here you sung I'm in Chapeltown.
Mm.
And immediately there's a connection.
And the song changes every single day when we're walking, because as we're in different places. So that first place will be where we are, and the second place will be where we're heading at the end of that piece of walk. And that's the staff that has walked nearly all of the way with the coat. There's occasionally a coat guardian who particularly objects to walking with the staff, but yeah, that's the staff that's been most of the way with it in front of it there.
Barbara, could you tell us about the coat guardians? Who are they?
So the coat has had several phases of life now, but in this time, the way that walking with the coat works is that a coat guardian convenes a group of pilgrims around a piece of walk. So in a sense, they're taking responsibility for that piece of the great big walk. And at the moment, there are 4 of us, which is myself, Helen Locke, Sarah MacDonald, and Tanya Myers. And we also form the coat core team. So we meet weekly on a Monday morning to plan and divide out the many tasks that there are in keeping the coat walking, actually.
And then do you find temporary coat guardians in each place where the coat
Yes.
stays?
Yes. So when we leave the coat somewhere, then ideally we find somebody who we hand the coat over to in trust, and then they become the coat guardian of that place and can take responsibility for the sharing of the coat in the absence of any of us from that core team.
Mm. And could you tell us, Barbara, a bit about wearing the coat and the things that people say? So I know when I put the coat on, it felt like a huge responsibility and a privilege, and all the normal daily rushing had to go because I had to let go in order to take on the responsibility of wearing the coat. And I remember physically slowing down as I walked with the coat. I walked slowly because of the that that burden, in a sense, of responsibility. And others have commented how it's been a real privilege, a real responsibility to be sharing the griefs and the hopes. Are they the sorts of comments that you hear from pilgrims?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think that there's you could kind of split most responses into two groups. One which is people who put the coat on and immediately feel empowered. They stand up in the coat, they grow, maybe they take the staff and say something like, I feel like Moses, or I feel like I'm part of history now, this kind of feeling. And then there are others who I think wear the coat and they primarily feel cared for.
Mm.
So they feel the coat's warmth, they feel its embrace, they feel the sense of connection
Mm.
with all the other people who've made the coat before them, who've made the coat or worn the coat before them. This is a picture of crossing from Holy Island in November of the year before last.
Mm. 2023. Mm.
Yes, my brain is like, what year are we in? Um, and this is just, I mean, there are so many different landscapes the coats walked through, but we were there during Storm Babbitt, and we were told it would be impossible to walk that day, but we got up, and when it was time to leave, the storm just seemed to calm just long enough for us to walk across the causeway when the water was out. And as soon as we got to the mainland, it was lashing with rain and high winds again. But we were told you walked through the eye of the storm. So that's that picture
Wonderful.
there. I mean, these are just little snapshots from all over the history of the coat. But this is a recent one. This is arrival in Ely. In the background there, you see Ely Cathedral. And the chap who's wearing the coat in this picture is a man called Robert. And we met him as we were walking along about 2 days prior to this with his dog. And he walked along with us some way and really enjoyed the encounter, I think, and shared with us a little bit about his life. And then, strangely, just as we were getting to Ely Cathedral, we bumped into him again, and so he was proud to wear the coat in front of the cathedral.
You must have some really interesting reactions when people aren't expecting the coat. Have you had any teenagers who've
Yeah, I mean, lots actually. I mean, one
Mm.
of the stories I always tell is about these boys in Dunstable, a little bit north of London, when we were walking to Glasgow. And they were probably about 12 or 13 wearing their school uniforms. And, they were curious and what's going on. And I said, this is the coat of hopes. And the first of them, I said, would you like to wear it? Explaining what it was and where we were going. And the first says, nah. And the second boy says, nah. But the third boy, who was called Chase, said, all right, I'll wear it. So he put on the coat and we sang to him. And afterwards he said, I feel like I'm part of history now. So, then his friends wanted to wear as well, of course, after that. But yeah, we've had lots of
Marvelous.
good encounters actually with adolescent boys, I think. I think it's a bit easier. They found it easier to put it on maybe than the girls. And this is the iconic drawing that was in the Financial Times during COP26, and by Lucinda Rogers. She was standing outside the gates just drawing. Her work is to document current affairs in drawing, and this is her drawing of me declaring the invitation to delegates and world leaders to wear the coat of hopes outside the gates of COP26.
That's a great drawing and a wonderful thing to have done, Barbara. And was your vision initially that you would make this declaration an invitation to COP26 delegates, or was it to collect many pilgrims, or has it evolved? Has the vision evolved as it's gone
It,
along?
it's always evolving. It's always evolving. But we did know we were going to COP26 originally, and part of the intention was to bring people's hopes, their griefs, remembrances, prayers, and hopes to the world leaders and the delegates at COP26. But the interesting thing about the process and being present in the process is that the things you have questions about, the answers come through the doing. So I remember not so long, maybe in the last week of our walk to Glasgow, there was a day when I went off and walked. I did a little bit of walking separately with a member of our pilgrim group, Yaz, and we walked off with the coat because it felt like it would be good to have a little bit of space. It's quite intense, 9 weeks of walking as a group together. And we visited a castle, and it was not an inhabited castle anymore. But as we went by this castle, I went up, I was wearing the coat, and I went up to the great big doors, and I just went and banged on the door. I just felt to do that, it felt the drama of this scene with the coat coming to bang on the door, and it was in that moment really that I realised that's what I need to do. That's what we have to do when we get to Glasgow, because we're not invited inside, but we have to just go and bang on the door. And so we did that every single day during the conference. We made a kind of mini pilgrimage from St George's Tron Church in the centre of Glasgow to the gates of COP26. Different people wear the coat all the time, so it's not in any way my coat, and it's so important that the important interaction with it more than anything is to wear it. So lots of different people would wear it on the way to those gates, and I would just wear it to make this declaration, as I often wear it if I'm presenting it. In a way, I feel like it helps me to know what I need to say about it. You put it on, and then you feel you're not just being your little self, you're being your big self too.
And you are also representing those griefs, remembrances, prayers, hopes, aren't you?
Yeah.
And when you were prompted to bang on the door and to make that declaration and to continue to do that in Glasgow, that was a way of connecting with the overt voices calling for change, the Christian climate action voices, for example, and others who still are present where there are political processes going on. And I noticed that 2 slides before the end, there was Judith, who I think is on this call, with 3 of the coat guardians, and Judith was wearing the coat, and that was while the can bill was being debated. So that was another place where the coat was very present during a process.
I mean, I think what's interesting to remember in speaking about that is that the coat, the space that the coat holds is non-oppositional. So the coat doesn't carry answers, it carries questions, and it doesn't make demands, it brings a space. So it has this unusual position in a way alongside many of the people who are outside saying, do this, please do this, or you must, or whatever. The coat really just says, come and what are you called to, really? I mean, the questions that the coat song
Mm.
ask me where I'm going, ask me what is my purpose. Those are the questions that the coat asks of us when we wear it. And so in a way, I mean, I've sometimes I speak and somebody will say, this happened actually the day before we arrived in Ely. Every single day when we're walking, we'll walk all day, we'll arrive somewhere in a church hall or a church or a village hall, and there will be a gathering of local people, and I will share about the coat. And so it was one of these gatherings, and somebody said to me, but what do you want us to do? Just tell us what it is you want us to do. And that's not the piece that the coat is doing. I'm not the coat,
Mm.
and so I can also have ideas about what I want to happen, but the work of the coat is not about telling people what to do. It's about inviting them to really deeply ask, what is it that they are called to do in this time of climate and ecological and indeed human emergency.
Yeah. So, Barbara, if there are people on this call this evening who have heard you say sometimes we go to a church hall or another space, physical space, and think that there's somewhere that they're connected to or in their locality, how would they get in touch to arrange for the coat to travel to them, to walk to them?
Well, the best thing to do is to send an email to yes@coatofhopes.uk. I have to say, we move incredibly slowly. So I've just been doing sending an email today to this poor, lovely person on the Isle of Wight, saying something that she emailed me about a year ago, and she sent an email saying, almost, are you nearly here now? And I'm saying, well, we're actually in Ely, and probably the chances are we won't make it to the Isle of Wight until the beginning of next year. Partly because actually part of this process is learning how to be uh, sustainable in our way of working. And we've worked very hard. I've spent a lot of time away with the coat, and it's a constant assessment of how it is right to be in the work, because actually this sense of urgency is great and compelling, but that the coat advocates for the opposite way of being, actually, which is saying we walk, we meet each person one at a time. You know, we don't need to speak on social media, we don't need to be on the television or in the newspaper. We meet people one at a time in a real meeting, and that work is slow. And yeah.
Yeah, it sounds as though for that slow work to continue at a deep level, the coat will be continuing on its pilgrimage for the foreseeable future. And I guess as long as there are questions to be asked, the coat will still be walking. Would that be right, Barbara?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the very rash commitment that I've made is to keep the coat walking whilst we remain in a state of emergency, in a state of climate and ecological emergency, which looks like a lifetime's work, and maybe more than a lifetime's work. In fact, somebody at a primary school said to me, when you die, do your children have to keep on walking with the coat? I was like, well, I don't know. There might be some other way that the coat gets handed on. I don't.
It really is. The coat is a gift for now and for the future. And talking of questions, it's probably time for us to go into breakout rooms, Barbara. And I think there are two questions that you had for people to think about in the breakout rooms.
Yeah, so the questions were really about whether you've met or experienced walking with the coat, if you've had any kind of encounter with the coat. And if you haven't had any kind of encounter with the coat, perhaps have you had any other kind of encounter with pilgrimage, the idea of pilgrimage in relation to the climate and ecological emergency? That's the first question. So that's really about sharing a story of your experience. And then the second question is about, do you have any practices, or what do you do in order to stand in the present with what is?
Lovely.
With the notion that's what the coat invites us into.
Welcome back. I hope you had good discussions. We certainly did. And to kick us off, Barbara, one of the comments in our group was how walking with a coat or being with a coat is a bit like, we've talked before about it moving slowly. It's a bit like being stillness. And in answering the second question, we took up this theme of stillness, how sometimes being still on the edge of activity and hubbub is really useful. We can look into and we can receive people's response. And I wonder whether that fits with what the coat's doing as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, moving at walking pace is an opportunity to see, isn't it? To really see what's around you, but also it's an opportunity to meet people who are also on their feet, coming back from the shops, going off to the dentist, you know. And something that I was just sharing in our group was that part of the way that the coat works is by interrupting people. And it's this unexpected interruption that gives rise to the opportunity for a moment of sort of sudden reflection or sudden consciousness, where you know, you're in the flow of your everyday life, doing your routine, and something comes and it interrupts you, and you realize there's something beyond your routine. And that feels like a really important part of the work, because it's so easy to get embedded in our routine, but the routine of the coat is to carry this interruption in the slow walking.
That does seem really important, and important to embrace those responses to the coat and to the interruption, which is something else we talked about. Did any other group pick up on that theme of interruption, or is there any question related to that or even different that you'd like to put to Barbara following your discussions? If you have a question, or if there's a story that you'd particularly like to share with the group, please just unmute yourself and join in.
The big question is, where is it going next? When is it coming to Tewkesbury?
Wow, when is it coming to Tewkesbury? That's a tricky question. Where it's going next is Norwich, and after Norwich, we're roughly making our way, having walked up the west side of the country, we're roughly making our way down the east side of the country. When we get to the south coast again, we will then walk along the south coast from, I think, Margate, somewhere around Margate, Ramsgate. We're going to rejoin the south coast, and then we'll walk along the south coast from east to west, arriving back in Newhaven, where we started 4 years ago, not long after our 4th anniversary of departing, or perhaps at the 4th anniversary of COP26. So in the autumn of this year, we'll be back in Newhaven. so not very good for Tewkesbury, probably. Nevertheless, I'm very happy to receive an email, and I'll put you in the box of places we need to get to.
Okay, thank you.
So if you send an email, and then you'll be in the box on the list.
Right. Okay.
And you're really welcome to make a patch. Somebody was asking earlier about patches. So the patch size now is about the size of a 50p piece in any shape. It could be square or oval or round, or a diamond shape. But the reason for that size is because that size can fit on the corner between 4 existing patches. So at the moment, the coat is getting deeper rather than longer. And I always say to people, look, just cut a little tiny piece. It's only the size of a 50p piece or a tiny little square out of your own blanket. Mend your own blanket there. And then whenever you're tucking up under your blanket, you'll know that mend is because there's a piece of your blanket walking around the country on the coat of hope.
Gosh, that's amazing.
Marvelous thought.
It's tiny. Yeah. Okay.
So
that really makes it personal and individual. Oh, we've got a question here from Judith. Making things by hand. Do people who see the coat ask about making things by hand? Because that too seems countercultural.
I don't know if they ask about it. I think that somehow in the context of the coat, it feels quite natural. I think lots of people feel drawn to contribute to the coat. And sometimes people say, oh, I'd love to make something for it, but I'm no good at it. I'm no good at that. I'm not very good with my hands. And that's where I always want to encourage them and say, it doesn't matter. If all you can do is get a fabric pen and scribble on your little piece of blanket, if you've spent your time with that piece of blanket, it's really about being present, being present in the making as well as in the walking. And that's where the making and the walking have this similarity, that they're both slow, and sometimes the walking does make you think of stitching, or the stitching does make you think of walking, as it's this kind of rhythmic, in and out and in and out. And
so both the sewing and the walking are rhythmic, like a prayer in some ways.
Yes.
And it's good that we can all contribute, even if we don't think we're into sewing. And we also said in our group that when some of us saw the coat during the big one March, some of us actually said, who's allowed to walk in it? What do you have to do to get to walk in it? We were quite awe-inspired at first, but it's lovely to know the coat's for all of us.
Yes, I really remember we went into this Gurdwara in Glasgow, and a young boy there, he was probably about 14, and he said, I offered him to wear it, and he said, I can't wear it. I can't carry that sort of weight, or I'm not worthy to wear it. And I said, don't feel the weight of it, just put it on and feel the warmth, just feel the love that it's been made with,
Yeah.
It's got so many different ways to meet people in the way that they need to be met.
Yes, definitely. David, Scott, you've got your hand up, David.
Yes, Barbara, to turn it around, it might be a difficult question to answer, but what is one thing that you weren't expecting when in the early days of doing this, that you've kind of learned, or what have you sort of got from these nearly 4 years of journeying around the country?
I can hardly begin, because it's so much. And that's such an important part of the way the coat works as well, is that it's the people that we become in the work. That is the work, as well as the sharing. So there's this incredible sense of working on the inside and outside, both at once. And sometimes it's it's very, very hard and heartbreaking work. We've certainly been to places that I would have never dreamed existed, like Hordern in County Durham, where I was astonished to find that as you walk through a street in central Hordern, at first you think it looks quite ordinary, and then you realise most of the doors and windows are actually life-size door and window photographs that are stuck on where you'd expect a door or a window to be, because actually most of those properties are boarded up and people are living in their properties behind the boarding. There's no point putting the windows back in because they'll get smashed again. That's an ex-mining town. The mine shut down in 1997, and when the mine pulled out, everyone in that town worked in the mine. When the mine pulled out, there was nothing left. So, I mean, I don't know. That just came to me as a real eye-opening moment, and that sense that there's so much to learn from those communities who've already gone over the edge of the cliff we keep talking about coming to the edge of. You know, there are people who are already over there, and we want to go and meet those people and say, what's it like over the cliff, because we're heading for the edge too. And there must be a lot to learn from those people. It's also wonderful to come to places where they say, I can't believe the Coat of Hopes has come to Willington, you know, like, or Ponders Bridge recently. Like, it's like nothing happens in Ponders Bridge. No one comes to Ponders Bridge, and suddenly it's like Ponders Bridge exists in a different way. And the fact that it's possible to bring that just by saying, can we come, just by walking, and the great gift of being in need, you know, that we need somebody to give us shelter, we need somebody to give us food, and that need opens up the possibility of an almost instant deep connection.
That connection is so meaningful, and we can hardly imagine that any of us would have connected with Hordern and Ponders Bridge without the coat. There are very few other ways we would make those connections.
And you never know what you're walking into, except that there's so often this mutual gratitude, you know, because there's the gratitude that we've brought the coat. People say, thank you so much for coming. I remember this woman in Cumbernauld in Scotland. She held my wrist really tightly and she said, thank you, and you must keep going, you must keep going, you must carry on for all of us. You know, really, like, it really lays it on you, and your heart is going to break because you think, boy, I can't do this work, you know. And that's the other great gift of the work, David, is realizing that you can't do the work, and actually at the point where you're almost finished and you say, you know, this is a personal thing for myself, that I say, God, I can't do this, but by God's grace, you carry on.
And because that woman is right, isn't she, that you must carry on, we must carry on, the coat must carry on. And it would be really interesting in 4 years' time if you go along some of the same paths that you went along before, to see what memories there are already of the coat. I remember the coat here 4 years ago, or what changes have been made, what new hopes there are, what new griefs there are. That would be really interesting and important too. We've just got a question from Myra. Have you been, I think I'll let you answer, but I think I know, have you been anywhere in Lincolnshire, for example, Grimsby?
I think the coat has been to Grimsby, but I wasn't walking with the coat in Lincolnshire. I'd have to actually this is how it is. I'd have to look at the spreadsheet to tell you for sure if the coat had been to Grimsby, but the coat has walked certainly through Lincolnshire and has spent a certain amount of time in Lincoln Cathedral. And in fact, the walk which ended in Ely began in Stamford, which is in South Lincolnshire.
Yes.
So, yes.
Yes. So can we come back to Myra on Grimsby? We'll come back to you, Myra.
Shall I try and look it up?
So we can come back to Myra. I know Myra, so
okay, great.
Thank you. Barbara, I wondered if you've got time to tell us in a minute or two about your story before the coat, your story with pilgrimage and what led you to make the coat.
Yeah, sure. So it's quite a feels like quite a long story now, which I will try and tell you as briefly as I can. I went to art school in London, Wimbledon School of Art, and whilst I was studying sculpture, and I was curious about whether it was possible to make a powerful object not by crafting it, but just by living with it, by using it. And the object that I chose to experiment with was a staff. So I started walking about 9 miles each way to and from art school every day with this large staff. I'm actually quite a tall woman. I'm nearly 6'4", so quite a noticeable person walking through the streets of London with this staff. And obviously the aim was to find out whether the staff would become an object that you could see in a room and say, oh wow, I know that thing's walked 1,000 miles. There's something special about that stick. But actually the centre of the work shifted away from the object into the conversations that happened on my way. And the question that came up again and again, which still echoes in the Coat song, is where are you going? And that question, which is so can be so banal, you know, I'm just off to Tesco's, or I'm wondering if I should marry this person. You know, it's so that very interesting kind of question, where are you going? And so I suppose I developed a way of working that centered around relationship and my own person in a way. And that's, you see how that's carried through in the coat. But another big part of my life has been making hats, animal hats, felt animal hats, very wild and very hairy. And what I learned in 8 years of feeding my family by making very wild and very hairy felt animal hats was how it transforms people to put on a garment. People would come and they'd put on a hat and they would just suddenly move differently, breathe differently, speak differently.
Yeah.
And so what came from the hats was this sense like, what is the garment we put on? What is the garment that we can put on that allows us to step into our power in this time of climate and ecological emergency?
And that leads me to ask you, Barbara, do you think that we need to be ready in any way to put on an animal hat or to put on the coat of hopes? It's there, the invitation is to us, isn't it? So is it just about accepting the invitation?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think you don't need to be ready. You just need to say yes. Yeah. And that's why the email address is yes at Code. It's kind of like, okay, I'm just, yes, I'll do it.
And we think that many more people, having seen the coat on its walk, will be ready to say yes. Because the other thing we've perhaps not touched on as much is it isn't just about how it feels and about the responsibility, but it's about the impact to passers-by, as you've said. And we didn't talk a lot, but you've said passers-by will stop, and because it's going slowly, they can connect and have those encounters and interactions.
Yeah, and I have a habit of trying to ask people 3 times if they would like to wear the coat, because we have quite a reserved culture. And so people will say, oh, no, I couldn't, you know, and oh, it looks very nice on you. And then the third time they'll say, oh, maybe. And another thing I will do is I will say, look, you don't have to wear it, but just feel how heavy it is. And just hand it to them, even just hand them the top of the collar, and they're, oh my goodness, they can't believe how heavy it is. But often once they've got their hand on it, they'll just slip it on.
And I think you have an ideal garment, don't you? Because if you slip out of it, it needs somebody else to slip in. It needs to be worn.
Yeah, and it's nice to also remember that now it's so big, it's not really a one-person job, the Coat of Hopes. You know, you really ideally want at least 2 train bearers. That's nice. If you've got like somebody wears it, 2 people carry the train, and that's what this situation is like as well, isn't it? It's not a one-person job, but if we all support each other in carrying the responsibility,
Yes.
then we can move forward.
Yes, absolutely. We're so happy that the coat is moving forward, and we look forward to moving forward with it. Barbara, thank you for a wonderful evening. So many of us have really connected with the coat, or have reconnected with the coat and the many facets of its meaning, its deep meanings. Thank you very much for giving us such a wonderful evening. And before we end, I think Barbara Ecklin is going to share a prayer, and then we'll finish. Thank you, Barbara.
Prayer by Michael Unick. We pray for another way of being, another way of knowing. Across the difficult terrain of our existence, we have attempted to build a highway, and in so doing have lost our footpath. God, lead us to our footpath. Lead us there where in simplicity we may move at the speed of natural creatures and feel the earth's love beneath our feet. Lead us there where, step by step, we may feel the movement of creation in our hearts. And lead us there where, side by side, we may feel the embrace of the common soul. Nothing can be loved at speed. God, lead us to the slow path, to the joyous insights of the pilgrim. Another way of knowing, another way of being. Amen.